Hi, folks. I am France Hong, co-founder and CEO of Boodle AI, the makers of Boodlebox. Welcome to the next segment in our accelerator. I'm thrilled to have Dr. Denise Turley join us today for a Q&A about AI and academic integrity, a topic that's at top of mind for many folks in higher education. For those who are joining live, welcome. I see I'm going to go ahead and unmute you so you can join us. For those who are joining us asynchronous, welcome as well, and hope you enjoyed this terrific session. So, Denise, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Well, we'd love to start off with a little bit about your background and how you've used AI in the classroom in this past year. It's been a time of change, as they say.
It really has been a time of change, but exciting change for me, I think, because I really love technology and I'm loving AI. So I'm an assistant professor in the School of Business for the University of Southwest, and I teach undergrad, grad, doctoral students. And so I've been really thinking about AI as my own personal assistant, and I'm trying to share that same philosophy with my students. Um, and so in my current course, which is marketing, it's a really fun way to use AI. And so this semester, we're integrating it as optional AI assignments just to warm students up to using AI. And so I'm using it with assignments like generating images, generating logos, creating presentations. So we'll walk through how to use tools like Canva or Beautiful.ai to create presentations. I have some assignments where I'll ask them to get a response from AI and then critique it and explain, whether they agree or disagree. And then we're also teaching them on how to cite the use of using AI tools, right? Because that's important. Well, I'm asking that they share prompts so that they can learn from each other. From my perspective, the use of AI is going to become critical in the workforce. And so I think it's critical for me to really teach my students how to use AI as their assistant so that they'll be better equipped for whether they decide to get a job or start their own business when they come out. So I've also created custom course spots so that kind of acts as a course assistant that's available 24/7. It's multilingual, so we have a lot of Spanish-speaking students in my course, and we don't necessarily have enough Spanish-speaking faculty to be able to service them in Spanish. So I found that that's helpful too. So this semester was more of a beta phase with optional assignments that we're still grading though. And next semester, we're fully integrating them into our courses as graded exercises. Not all throughout the school yet, but in some of our courses. And we've also implemented acceptable use policy and socializing that with students so that we're just kind of prepping for the next phase because we're all just trying to figure out the best way to integrate and to learn how to use AI.
So, Denise, I have to ask, what has been the student reaction to your introduction of AI into the classroom?
The students love it. I found that they are really enjoying it. From my perspective, it is increasing engagement in our discussions. They seem to be having a lot of fun, particularly with generating images. So the images are really cool. So far they've really embraced it and they enjoy it. Again, it's an optional assignment. And so I'm finding that almost all of the students are choosing to do that optional assignment. There's a lot of excitement. And I think I just read recently that research is telling us that, look, students are already using this and adopting AI at a much faster pace than faculty. So I think we're just playing catch up.
Yeah, I read somewhere that it's a ratio of 2 to 1, that students right now are twice as likely to use generative AI than faculty, which obviously presents a bit of a problem, right, Denise? I mean, in terms of that's an awkward place, I would imagine, for faculty to be, where students are more facile with a piece of technology than they are. So let's turn to the term. Let's turn to academic integrity. So let's go back, let's rewind the clock. What did academic integrity mean to you before the age of AI?
Yeah, which wasn't so long ago, right? So
Right.
so before AI, we really focused on the student independently creating their work, right? And making sure that they were citing the use of any sources that were used. Otherwise, we considered that cheating, right? You were plagiarizing somebody else's work. And if you had someone else do the work for you, that was certainly an integrity issue. And now we're having to rethink that because these large language models can create content in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, so that obviously leads to the next question. And so how has academic integrity in your mind then changed in a world with AI?
So it's forcing many of us early adopters to have to stop and think, well, what does this mean now? And how can we change the way we think about assessments when we recognize that perhaps we shouldn't have as much value placed on the output of a thing, right? Because creating that paper now is effortless, perhaps. But we do need to make sure that we're holding students accountable for owning the accuracy and the quality of that output because as we know, AI can make things up. It's not always accurate. And I think that for me, at least, I'm focusing more on critical thinking and problem solving and communication as skills, and focusing less about the creation of the content, but also making sure that they are appropriately citing any use of additional tools, right?
Yeah, so and I think the citation portion is really important and obviously is a good starting point. Denise, I've seen you post frequently on social media. You're very thoughtful, insightful. That's how we first connected on LinkedIn. I've always enjoyed your thoughts, very pragmatic, but at the same time, thinking forward looking. And you speak with a lot of people in the education field about AI. What are some of the range of approaches you've seen regarding academic integrity in AI? Like what are the kind of the bounds, left, right, and in the middle?
Yeah, so I think there are some who still think that this is cheating, right? And we're seeing that with many different industries, not just education, where we firmly believe and we were raised to think that we had to kind of do our own work, right? Your hard work pays off, and so you must do that hard work, otherwise there's no real reward. And so I think we're trying to grapple with what does that mean. So many people are still trying to rely on tools like Turnitin or AI detection tools that claim they can identify patterns and algorithms in some of the work to see if we can catch those cheaters. Um, and so that really puts us in a tough position of being accusatory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then I think we're seeing a large number of faculty now recognizing, or we believe at least, that AI is here to stay. And so trying to really lean in and do things similar to what I'm doing and start teaching students how to use AI, how to work more collaboratively, um, and focus less on trying to catch students' use of AI and instead trying to think about how can we use AI to collaborate and come up with an output that maybe is fantastic.
Yeah, so it's interesting. This idea of basically AI is bad, human is good. So anything done with AI is by definition not their work, not good, and should almost be punitive, right, if included in assignment. I feel like that's one of the views, right, and maybe the knee-jerk reaction view. Denise was just clearly different than the approach you've taken, which is more of this AI as a collaborator in the classroom and for class work. But um, is that a mindset? Is that a way of approaching that's different? Would love your thoughts on, I think the initial reaction, which I just described, right, which is AI is, I don't want to say the enemy, but there's human, there's AI. Human's good,
Yeah.
AI is bad. So how do we fix that?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I know yet. I think that we're still trying to figure about it. And listen, the education industry is one that's been around for a long, long time. So to a certain extent, it's habit and it's muscle memory, right? And so it's trying to undo that. If for
Mhm.
so many years we've thought that we can see your screen, by the way. If for so many years we have thought that it is cheating to have somebody else do your work, and it was, right? If I had you write my paper, that isn't how I would have given a student credit, was for somebody else doing their work. But this isn't really a somebody else anymore, right? It is a tool that still needs the human with the prompting and with the refinement for us to be able to get the output. So I think it's different. I think it is a mindset shift. It's a cultural shift. It's a systematic shift that has to happen. First, I
Mhm.
think we have to believe that AI really is here and is here to stay. And some have not yet bought into that. And that's okay. It's still relatively new. And then we have to figure out, hey, we have to change so many things now to really fully integrate AI into our courses, and it's not easy.
Yeah, no, I think there's certainly a range of challenges in integrating AI in a thoughtful manner. On the other end of the spectrum, similar to your approaches, I've talked to folks who are taking the viewpoint, it's not even AI collaboration. The work with AI actually is the point. And some professors are assigning students the work with AI not as AI optional, but I want you to use AI. I want you to produce results. And I don't even care about the results. I want to see your prompts. I want to see the chat logs. I want to see how you interact with it. I'm actually going to grade you on your actual usage of AI, which is, I think, way like 180 degrees off from the other viewpoint, which is AI is bad. It's almost to the point where like the point is now AI. So what do you think about that approach?
Yeah, I mean, I like that approach, and I'm going to be using a similar approach in my next course where we have fully integrated AI assignments as graded assignments. I'm not going to the extent of wanting to see chats. For me, I don't know yet how that will be valuable, but again, it's learning, we're changing. It might be a year from now or 2 months from now, the way AI is changing. Um, but yeah, I think it's a balanced approach. I mean, I definitely don't want to just see the output of a student's work, because when you get comfortable and good with AI, you can produce something good in under 5 minutes. I do it all the time, right? And so I don't think that that's where we want to go. There
Yeah.
still has to be a way that we can assess critical thinking, evaluation of the output, review of the output, and giving credit to, even if it's the AI tool, right? But I think this is going to challenge us to really think about, well, what are we assessing now as educators? It cannot just be the output of a thing, right?
So that's a perfect lead into my next question, something you and I discussed last week, which was just a fascinating short conversation, but one I want to spend more time on today, which is in a world where AI is allowed, right? What should be graded? Is it the work? Is it the output? Is it both? What matters? I mean, in the work world, right? In once you leave school, what matters is the output. Like,
That's right.
I've never had a boss say to me like, show me your work in generating this PowerPoint slide. They're just like, this is a great slide, right? But
Yeah,
education isn't work, right?
yeah.
So, so what's the answer to that? Or at least your answer?
Yeah, and again, still trying to sift through it, but in my mind, I mean, ultimately, what we're doing with education is we're trying to prepare students for a successful career, right? So if we're not preparing them for the workforce, I might argue that we're failing. Now, whether that's them working for somebody else or whether that's them going into business for themselves, we still need to prepare them for the real world, which is the next step. Um, and so you're right. Once they get to work, I'm going to focus on the output. But we want to make sure that when we're in the education space, we're teaching them on how to get to a quality output, how to evaluate and critique that output, to know that that output is accurate and that it's
Mhm.
quality. We don't want to just over rely on whatever the AI has put out. Otherwise, they're going to go to work, they're going to produce that thing, and it could be wrong. So we need to teach them how to also still own the output of their work. You still own the accuracy, you own the quality. Just because it looks good and it sounds like it should be true and accurate doesn't mean that it is.
Yeah, I love that point, Denise, that it's not just producing output, it's producing quality output, right? And output that is, responsibly used, right? Is it reliable? Is it used in an ethical way? And in order to do that, you have to understand what quality output is. And in order to do that, right, you have to understand the process by which it's created. And simply saying the AI told me so is not going to, it's not going to be sufficient, right, in work. Just to the same extent that all your boss, your customer, your client, your coworker cares about is the quality of the output. Well, whether it's human or AI generated, you're still responsible. And so maybe part of the role of education is thinking about how do we teach students to generate output responsibly, right? And then actually validate that it's good output and that it's used in an effective way. So is that a good summary of what I'm trying to, I'm paraphrasing, but
No, I think that's exactly right. And the example you just gave about work is also true, that when you produce a document, a presentation, an analysis to your boss, your coworker, whomever at work, they might not come to you and say, well, walk me through step by step how you put this together. But what they might make you do is defend your position on that output, or they might ask you follow-on questions, or how did you come to this decision? And so you have to still be able to be a subject matter expert on your work and the output that you are producing and sharing with others. And so we still have to teach them, right, about the content, about the quality, about the accuracy, about the reliability. And then the other piece that you just mentioned too is we also need to teach students how to use this in a manner that protects them, right? You can't just go putting all of your personal information in these tools. We have to teach them how to protect themselves. And faculty, we also have to learn how we can act in a responsible manner that protects our student data. I know some faculty are using AI for grading right now. It is not something that I am doing right now. Some are, but we have to be also careful about that and making sure that we are protecting our student data.
Yeah, so an analogy people often bring up, myself included, is the calculator analogy, right? Like we used to teach math, it was all longhand, and the calculator came along. We still teach math, but we still allow students to use calculators. Do you think that's a fair analogy, or are there places where it falls down?
I think it's a good, overly simplistic, right? Because I think a calculator is very black and white. It can only do one thing for you, right? It can do math. That's it.
Yeah.
These AI tools are able to produce and do so many things beyond math. So I think we have to think about it a little bit differently and a little bit more responsibly. Just being able to add or multiply or do division on a computer is true. It isn't necessarily cheating. We learn to accept it as an assistive tool. And I think that AI, we should be thinking about it as something similar. It is an assistive technology that we can use to still make sure that we're highlighting the intelligence and the capability and the skill set of the students and humans.
Yeah. So I think the calculator is interesting because generally speaking, you can rely on the output of a calculator, right? Like you don't have to like defend, if you turn in the results of a calculator, a programmable calculator, generally speaking, it's not like the professor is going to be like, well, why was 5 times 5? You're like, well, it's pretty reliable. The calculator does that in a reliable way. I think your point of the reliability of the information that comes out of a large language model is not the same, right? It can be very suspect. In fact, I think any of us who use AI in an area where we have expertise immediately sees all the problems with the results, right? And I would say it's a B- at best. And you really need the human touch to get to the A+. So So I do think that I agree with you. I think there are some differences between that analogy. Have you thought about in your own coursework or just in general, right, about when and where and how AI should be introduced in coursework, right? Is it different for a freshman who's taking an entry-level course versus a senior who's taking a 400 level course?
I don't think so. But you're talking to somebody who's an early adopter and a strong believer in AI. So I firmly believe that we need to upskill everyone, right? I think we should be teaching it in K through 12. I think that there is no age that is potentially too young to learn responsibly about technology, and AI right now is a new technology. It's a new thing
Mhm.
that when used appropriately can really just allow our capabilities to soar. So I think it should be considered as one of the first courses that freshmen take coming into university, so that they have the right skill set to arm them with success.
Yeah, all right. I think it's going to be one of those things. I look forward to seeing the different approaches that folks in higher education take on this question.
Yeah,
I've spoken to some faculty who believe that there should be no AI in like 102 level courses. You need to
yeah,
do this manually, and it only gets introduced later on. But to your point, Denise, like there are other people who feel everyone should be upskilled. But this is actually a great equalizer, right? That there
yeah,
are folks, otherwise disadvantaged, where AI actually is a tremendous resource from day one.
yeah.
So I don't know. Happy to take any additional comments you have on that.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, I think that we probably will end up somewhere with a nice balance and compromise. I think any ultimate solution will be balanced. I think that we're seeing AI adoption, AI policies, other countries really pushing and investing in AI. And if we don't upskill our students, our population in the US, I think there's a high risk that we will fall behind, and that's a big risk beyond the education sector. But I think
Mhm.
it's important. I think we are maybe a couple of months away from people being able to have their own virtual assistants that helps them with almost anything that's going on throughout your day, right? Planning your schedule, prepping you for meetings, prepping you for a test, anything that's going on. And so to not arm our students with that technology that could end up being an advantage, not just for them individually, but for us more as a society overall. I'm not sure why we wouldn't do that, right? But I understand others who feel, you know, maybe there is still some value in us, doing long division and writing out a essay. I mean, it took us a few years to actually get away from writing with pencil and paper, right? We've only recently got away from that with the SAT exam. So some some traditions die hard. You talked about the calculator, and there are still some assessments and some tests that do not allow calculators to help you, which is interesting, right? But they still exist. So I think that while we are changing, while some of us are adopting AI, while there are some institutions that will jump on board earlier, there will be other institutions that are much slower to adopt. And I just think they have to be careful about what that does to their enrollment. And we're already seeing, as you mentioned, that students want to use technology. They're excited about it. I think that we will start seeing students choosing schools that align with their technology preferences.
Oh, that's interesting. So some schools would be AI forward, others
Yes,
are, hey, we are AI optional, and other schools are
yes,
like, we are, AI free, I
yes,
guess.
yeah. I talked to a couple of rising high school seniors 2 weeks ago, and we had this exact conversation as far as, well, you're thinking about what schools to go to, where to spend your money now for your education. How is that playing into your decision? And they were like, absolutely, we want to go to a school that's AI forward thinking, not one that is still thinking about it as punitive. These were people who are technology focused, right? So it's
Yeah.
probably a different than somebody maybe is in a different major, but for them, it definitely was a consideration on where they were going to school.
Yeah, I wonder for the schools that want to be, though maybe a little slower to adopt AI. I wonder whether they're going to have the choice, Denise. I read a study that said that three-quarters of students, according to this study, they would continue to use AI even if AI was banned.
Oh, that I absolutely. I mean, listen, we already know they're going to use it. I think it would be wishful thinking to think that they weren't. They will. We also already know that the AI detection tools do not work. I've tested them myself. They're not good. And so we're setting ourselves up for failure if we think we can catch cheating. All we're doing potentially is a disservice to these students who really need to understand an AI skill set to be able to get out and get great jobs in the workforce of the future.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm a professor, I'm an assistant professor in a college. I like what I hear. I did not use AI last year. I want to use it this fall semester. I have no idea where to begin with regards to academic integrity, citing people's work, having them cite it, having them include their prompts, having them should, how much should I allow to use? What advice do you have for a faculty member in that position?
Yeah, I mean, so I think first you've got to make sure that you are in alignment with your school's policies, right? So I actually did some workshops at my school where I was kind of training some of the faculty on AI, what it is not. So number one, make sure you are in alignment. We also then drafted an acceptable use policy because we have to have a policy before I then can go and start introducing it to my course, even in beta. Um, but after that, as I mentioned, I did optional AI assignments. So if you have a writing assignment, that assignment still stood, but I might give the option of doing an assignment using and integrating AI. And then I'm also teaching them on how to share the prompt if they're generating an image, share the tool that you use, share your feedback on your experience with using AI, right? Was it great? Was it wrong? Did you have to iterate on that conversation? Citing your sources is really, really important if you're using AI to generate content versus edit content. So that's how I've gotten started. I found that they like the fun projects at first. Creating PowerPoints in like Canva or beautiful.ai for me too is fun. Now, again, remember, I love technology, so I'm a technology person. But the students thus far have really enjoyed it. They've leaned in, they seem to be loving it. I'm impressed with what I'm seeing from them as far as I love the images that when you see the imagination from somebody else and how they might interpret an assignment to create a AI image of a bird in a pond or whatever it might be, and then the variations that you get back, they're just simply amazing. So that would be what I would suggest is start off with optional assignments, start off slow, realize that your students are at different levels. Some may have been doing this for a year and they're pros at it, and others may not have started yet. And that's okay.
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple times citing the AI or citing the or showing the prompt or something like I'm a neophyte. What does that mean? Like talk me through what you actually required the student to turn in. Was it a list of prompts they used? Was it a link? Was it a printout of the conversation? How do they cite the work of AI?
Yeah, that's great. So if we're generating images, logos, I ask them to share the prompt and the tool that they used. Um, Oftentimes we'll share that collaboratively because I want other students, I want them to learn from each other, right? Because prompting is a thing, right? It's a skill. And so I have them share their prompt and the tools that they use. And then if it's an assignment, then I have them cite. I mean, APA is included now, how you cite your AI use. And so they have to cite that in a paper. I also have them cite very clearly if they're using the AI to either generate the content versus just refine and edit. So that's what I'm doing. They're doing it as in-text citations, and they're also using them as references at the end of the assignment, depending on what the assignment is, of course. Sometimes it's just an evaluation where I might say, if there's an exercise, we might say, you can go to an LLM and have the LLM respond to this question, and then you can share what that response was, and then you almost go into an argument with the response, right? Did you agree? Did you not agree? Why and why not? So those are some of the things that I'm doing as of now.
Yeah, and then what should a new instructor do with that citation? Okay, so they cited the work, they included the prompt. Do you rerun the prompt? Do you
We
check their
don't.
work?
I mean, again, I think
Yeah,
it's mindset. I think each school and instructor is going to have to find their own place about where they're comfortable on how they're evaluating their students. For me, I'm not trying to catch a student out in a cheating, if you will, right? To see, well, did they actually use this exact prompt? Also, there's really no point because we don't really know how these models work. Um, I work in a technology team. We are creating AI solutions all the time. You could take that same prompt and enter it in 25 times and get a slightly different response every time. So me trying to take the prompt that a student used and trying to recreate that, it would be fruitless. What am I proving? Nothing.
yeah. Does the quality of the prompting matter? In other words, is it enough that they use that that's all you care about? Or are you actually looking in and seeing, well, gosh, they submitted 50 prompts and it clearly did a little bit because you mentioned there's a difference between did you generate this versus did you refine it? And those are two different use cases of AI. But to what
Right,
extent
that's
do you
right.
their interaction with the AI and what contribution it made to the final work product?
Yeah, at this point I haven't, and we haven't gotten that far into it, probably because it is still so new. I expect that we'll continue to refine how we're grading and how we're working through submissions over the next few
Yeah.
courses. But right now it is just so new. We don't have anything where I would say, yes, this is a fantastic rubric and it works 100% of the time. We're not there yet. For me personally, I don't see the value in going and tracing through prompts and seeing how many times it took you to iterate through prompts to get to
Mhm.
the output. If I were teaching a class on prompt engineering or efficient prompting, I might care a little bit more, right? Because now I'm caring about the quality of the prompts. I'm trying to teach you how to be efficient in your prompts. That's not these classes.
Yeah. Okay.
And also,
Uh,
when we think about AI is supposed to be a conversation. So we expect there to be iterations on prompts.
right, right. And uh, so you've do you care to the extent that students use, like how much AI is used? I've heard some people literally try to set a threshold, like your assignment cannot be more than 20% AI generated. Now, putting aside how do you measure that, or maybe don't we put it aside? Let's talk
I
about that.
know.
What
Yeah.
what do you think of that approach?
I think it's just so hard. I mean, I don't, to your point, it's great to come up with that in theory, right? It makes sense. Let's say you can only use AI to do X percentage, and then because I want to stick with my traditional methods of evaluating, and I still strongly believe that you creating your own work is important to me in my school, sure. But then we get back to, like you said, well, which 20%? Is it just the first 20% of the paper? Is it in the middle, or is it intermingled throughout? And how would I ever be able to validate and back into that 20%? I would be setting myself up for a nightmare. It's something that I just don't have the time to do, being selfish. And it's also not something that I personally would see the value in doing.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
understand the mindset. I understand where that comes from.
right. So where do you think we're headed on this issue? So, we're a little over a year into generative AI being a part of our world, being a part of academics in the classroom and for classwork. You're obviously an early adopter and very forward thinking on this. I think you and others are trying different things and sharing those results with the rest of the community, which is fantastic. But so we're having this conversation a year from now, Denise. What
Yeah.
is it? How are we talking about academic integrity at that point?
Yeah, listen, I think it's going to be a shift. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, I think we are going to be forced into a shift, right? Whether or not we want to believe it, whether or not as educators we think it's the right thing, I don't think it's going to matter. I think we are going to be forced, somewhat just like when the internet came along, right? There were some organizations, companies that didn't maybe want to adopt, right?
Mhm.
But sooner or later you get forced into it. It's either you change or you die. That sounds really dire, but I think that that is what's going to happen. The other thing I would say is that even though this technology has been out for about a year and a half now, it is still brand spanking new for schools because the first year, most of us didn't do anything. Most didn't. And even for schools, there are very few who are just now starting to think about adopting. The thing about AI and the thing about education in every single industry is it isn't just about teaching the surface level AI. It's now, how do I, as an organization, think about incorporating this new technology in a way that supports my entire faculty and my entire student body, that is efficient and I can grow it, right? Because now this becomes a technology that I have to figure out from an administrative perspective. How do I do that? And we haven't figured that out yet. Sure, there are lots of bolt-on tools that can do different things, right? But they end up being quite inefficient. That's another reason I haven't used AI to grade. By the time I take out any personally identifiable information and then try and dump it into an AI and then try and marry it up with the rubric and then get an output and then maybe iterate on my prompt, I could have just graded. So I do anticipate
Right.
that a year from now, most of the bigger players in the ed space, the ed tech space, will have incorporated AI into the tool so that it becomes seamless for us as educators to use them. If they're not easy to use, you're going to find low adoption, right? That's my opinion. I also think that there will be disruptors to the space who are going to come in and figure this out before some of the larger legacy organizations. Sometimes you get so large, you're like a great big ship and you're really slow to move and it takes you so long. And just as you're getting to turn, somebody else has come in with new technology that's fully integrated and bam, your market share is now decreasing. So I think we are at risk of that. There are so many new fantastic tools coming out now, Boodlebox being one of them, that really stand to disrupt the industry and really kind of show us a new way of doing things. So I think technology at this point is able to lead the way and lead us and show us how to do things differently. And I think a year from now, listen, AI is going to be integrated in pretty much all schools. It's just some will have done it really well because they would have started sooner. Some of the smaller schools are probably at risk of their entire business models if they do not adopt. And then as educators, we're going to have to rethink, what does this mean, right? What does this mean for me? Because robots are coming out. Will they be out a year from now? I don't know, but definitely AI assisted learning is on our heels.
Yeah, you've touched on, thank you for mentioning Boodlebox. I do think there is a role for technology in collaboration and partnership with educational leaders like yourself to develop technological solutions that can solve some of the challenges in the classroom that faculty face. You touched on two things that we're going to have later webinars on, which is great. It's a great lead up, Denise. First is grading, right? Ultimately, all that student work has to be graded. How do you grade in a time of AI? And then second, what is the role, right, of an educator in a world where AI exists? And that's a much larger discussion and one I look
Yeah.
forward to having you and other members of the Boodlebox educational community. So at this point, I'd love to turn it to questions. Eduardo, I see that you've joined us. Welcome. Would love for you to join the conversation. First, maybe starting off if you're willing to share any insights you might have on this topic, and then second, any questions you may have for Denise.
Thank you, Francis, for that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can absolutely hear you.
Great, awesome. If it gets too loud, let me know. I'm sitting at a cafe right now, so not at my office. Denise, thank you so much. This is very interesting and a lot of very useful information. As we speak, I am going over in my mind how can I integrate this in my upcoming courses at Watson Institute, out of which one of them could be actually AI, tools of AI for social impact, or how can we use AI in the social impact environment. That's what we do at Watson Institute. It's a degree on social innovation and social entrepreneurship. So I teach systems dynamics and apprenticing with a problem entrepreneurship courses to get from project to action. So I have so many questions, and I've been taking notes like crazy as I've been going through. But there's a couple of things that I put a stars on it, and this is what I got. Teach how to own the output, quality and responsible output. Understand the process by which it was created. What is a responsible output? I guess in order to teach them, how to own it, first, what is responsible output under AI? What would be the ABCs of a responsible output? If you could, just share with you how you see this, that'd be great.
Yeah, when you mentioned responsible output, in my mind, I would say have responsibility for the output. And really what I mean is checking the accuracy of the output, because we know that sometimes these AI models will what they call hallucinate, which just means they make stuff up. So sometimes they will need to go back and backtrack into those appropriate scholarly references or journals and make sure that the output of the AI is accurate, right? If they're presenting it as their own, they still need to do some work to make sure it's accurate and reliable, and that's their responsibility.
Okay, yep.
Does that make sense? Now, one of the things that you just mentioned, what I would consider if I were you, and I will consider too in one of my upcoming classes, is because you're thinking about AI and social impact, one exercise might be to think about how do I identify bias in AI, and are there ways that we can mitigate bias in AI? That's a big topic right now with social impact, and something you might give some thought to see if it kind of resonates with you.
That's wonderful. No, it does resonate, and it is a big, angle to, of course, all the different social impact challenges that we tackle. Going back to the responsible or the responsibility to for your own work, that is one take on it. But the other one is also the integrity of bringing a responsible and owning your output, right? On the integrity side, do you have any follow-ups on that? I mean, to make sure that you're using an integral or be integral with using the AI, anything there that you would recommend as an ABCs on how to do that?
For me, I think the integrity comes more around don't put work off as your own when it's not your own. So that really still comes back to the citations.
Okay.
Yeah, the same way that we would with any other source, right? So if AI really helped you create this paper or a section of the paper, then give those citations in text and in the references at the end so that we are giving credit where credit is due.
Great. I don't want to hog the conversation. I have one more. Is it okay if I just, ask one more question, friends? I mean, if not, I'll come back.
No, please go ahead, Eduardo.
Okay. Yeah, I start some other comments, some other notes here. It says, also use it in a way it protects the user. That I'd also would love to hear a little bit more on that. How can I teach them to protect themselves while using AI? What did you mean by that, and how can I go about that?
Yeah, I love that question. So one of the things is making sure that they are not putting in any of their personal or private information. So if they are running a paper through the system, they might want to make sure that their name, their student ID, right, their address, things like that are not on the content. Sometimes we upload information into the chatbot, and we want to make sure there's nothing in there that's personal that they would not want to get out. Same thing with personal images. People are playing around with images right now. They can do a bunch of really cool things. We want to make sure that they're being very careful about what they load into these tools, because the ones that are free will take your information and use it to train models. So you just have to be very careful that you understand. Number one, just don't do it. Teach them if it's personal, don't input it into the tool. There's nothing that the tool needs it for. But the second thing is to always be very careful and understand the data security and privacy of the tools that you're using. So just go through their website and have a look to see what the policies are of those tools, because many of them they're just storing all the data.
Absolutely. No, I hear you. Thank you very much. Just, to close on my end, I am totally with you on the fact that AI should be a foundational level course, and that everybody should start using it from day one. I teach foundational courses at Watson, and I see the benefit of starting as early as possible, whether it's AI or whether it's, whatever kind of foundations you need in order to get to your career. So great. Thank you so much, Denise. I'd love to follow up and stay in touch with you on in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. I'll send you a request. Thank you so much.
And I'm so glad to hear that you too are thinking about AI, how to integrate it in the coursework, and that you also believe that it's foundational for our students. That's great.
Thanks again.
So Denise, as you were talking about how do you protect yourself or teach a student to protect themselves in using AI, I always like to think about the converse of trends, right? So if 75% of the students are using AI, I've heard stats like that, that means 25% aren't. In your case, in your class, AI is optional. I could imagine though a situation where AI is required or AI is part of the course, and a student actually objects to the use of AI. I think AI is dehumanizing. I think these things are trained on stolen data. They are consuming a prodigious amount of energy and contributing to climate change. And I refuse to use AI. Have you come across that situation, or if you haven't, how would you deal with that?
What a fantastic thing to ask. So in my next two courses, I think I mentioned that AI is now a requirement. So I don't know. I may have to take that to the dean if we come up to it, because once we've made it a requirement of the course, you sort of must do it, or we face a different. Now, what I imagine might happen is, you can see the syllabus and you've got 2 weeks to drop the course. So if you really are at odds with the use of this new technology, I imagine they might drop, or that may end up being my suggestion. Because again, if the school that you're going to is not in alignment with the things that you believe personally, it just might not be the right fit, and not every institution is the right fit. So my institution is starting to adopt AI. I imagine in this early stages, there's probably another section of the same course that's being offered without AI that they could probably hop on over into. But that's a fantastic question. And I do imagine that will come up for some of us.
Right. In other words, don't sign up for the Introduction to Excel class if you have a moral objection to Excel. Right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I have not come across that yet, Denise. I'm only guest lecturing and visiting lecturing. I do intend in the fall to incorporate AI into my guest lectures in some way, because I just do think it is pervasive. And I do want, I try to stay relevant in the things I'm teaching. But
Yeah.
I was just thinking to myself, like if I say to a class, like, okay, now everyone break out your phones, go to this link, I want you to use this. And some student raises their hand and says, I object, right? I
Right.
don't want to ever use this technology. How would I handle it? I haven't really thought that through, to be
Yeah.
honest. But your question, your description, I was trying to put my place in a student. I was like, boy, I'm getting a little nervous. Like she's talking about personal identifying information and training data. Maybe I just want to like just
Yes.
opt out, right? I'm
Right.
out, right?
Stay safe. Yeah, I completely get that.
Yeah.
So I'll
Okay.
let you know if it happens and how we deal with it.
Yeah, and as we create the more of a community here and expand it, I think this would be a great topic for a community discussion
I
as
think
well.
so. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
for those who are listening and are part of the accelerator, welcome. Thank you for continuing to be part of the accelerator. Please spread the word. We've got some exciting news. We're going to be creating what we call the Boodle U for university community on Circle here shortly. We're going to be inviting everybody who's in the accelerator to join, as well as all the members of our terrific leadership council on collaborative AI in higher education, including Denise here, Dr. Turley, and we're looking to grow that community, and we need your help doing so. So please check that out. Also, I think everybody who is part of the accelerator is already receiving our AI collaborative newsletter, the higher education edition. If you're not, please check that out. It's turned out to be really, really popular. We see incredible engagement and feedback from that, and that's meant to be a resource for you all in the classroom and those leading classwork. So we encourage you to check that out as well. And for those of you who are not familiar and just somehow happened upon this content, check out boodlebox.ai/education. So boodlebox.ai/education. It's our place where we're putting a bunch of resources, both in terms of training and certifications and resources like the community, as well as information about the Boodlebox platform, which we are continuing to evolve and grow in response to feedback from folks like from Denise and other members of the Leadership Council and from the community as large. So we'd welcome your input. So thank you again for joining this next installment of our accelerator for collaborative AI in higher education. We look forward to you joining next week when we have our next couple sets of webinars. And thank you again for being part of our community.